And so, it begins. Dark were the skies and chill was the wind as the land was covered in a veil of malice. Across the hill did ride a dread army of the night, cloaked in mist and fog, prepared to rain down death and destruction upon the land. And the people did crowd for a savior, a noble soul to save them from their impending demise. Just as it seemed all was lost, in strode a mighty hero, clad in shivering metal from head to toe. Wielding a terrible broadsword, he did cleave his foes in two, smashing their ranks asunder with righteous fury. And when the day was done and the enemy strewn across the fields in pieces, the people did turn to the warrior and say, "We shall name this day in your honor. Speak unto us your wisdom." The warrior said one word that day: epic.
One man, one Murloc, one giant angry badger. This is Blue Please. It begins now. Yes, indeed, folks. Welcome to Blue Please here on WoW Radio with myself, Total Biscuit. The date today is the 3rd of July, 2009. It is 8 p.m. BST. It is 3 p.m. EST. It is probably something like 12 in the afternoon PST. I don't know. I don't care. Only time zone that matters is right here and right now, and that will be an official time zone if I have anything to say about it. My name is Total Biscuit. This is Blue Please. What a show we have coming up for you today. Yes, we do. Ho, 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 ho. I love drama. I love drama so much, especially when the Americans do it, because they do it so well. Exodus and the mysterious Yogg-Saron kill. Or was it? I'll tell you a little bit about that later in the show. They made a little bit of a mistake. Let me put it that way. A little bit of a mistake. To be honest, the biggest mistake they made was not giving me a proper statement when I asked for one. Bad move. You'll find out why a little later on in the show. Also, Blizzard has allowed, or will allow you to change faction for a price. Question is, would you want to? Does it affect the game balance? Is it a slippery slope? All sorts of stuff like that. Why it's probably not as bad as you make it out to be. Also, just how important is it how our character looks? There have been whines, there have been complaints about Tier 9. We look back into the past, and in the past we will find various other instances of, hey, that looks really bad, yet it's got great stats on it. Do I have to wear it? Oh yes, tier sets. What are you doing? And we'll be talking about that a little bit later on in the show. And of course, your chance to contribute to this week's show. How do you do it, you might ask? Well, you have the opportunity in the illusion of choice. And in the illusion of choice, I will shatter your illusions of choice by choosing one, only one, of your potential topics for the last 15 or so minutes of the show. You can email themurloc@gmail.com. That is themurloc@gmail.com. And you get to choose, or attempt to. Now, I must apologise in advance if I'm sounding a little bit sniffly, maybe start a coughing fit in the middle of the show. I am not especially well. I am getting better. I'm good enough to do the show. I'll see how my voice manages to handle the rest of the show. And you know what? If I run out of voice halfway through the show, the rest of it will consist entirely of drop-ins. Or possibly old shows you probably won't notice. Maybe you will if I go back to 2005 ones that had the different music beds, and I'm talking about the brand new Instance Blackwing Lair. I don't know. That's the sad thing. I think probably half of the people that listen to WoW podcasts wouldn't realise that. Oh well, speaking of WoW podcasts, I have a rare pat on the head and congratulations that must go out to the one and only Starman and Renata of World of Warcast, who have reached their 4-year anniversary slightly after I did. So congratulations to them, you are still around. I am still waiting for the one episode where Starman actually gets riled about something, and the guy seems to be the most chill guy on the planet. So yeah, if you want an antidote to my show, you should go check them out. worldofwarcast.com. Right. Time to rummage. Yes. Scratch around, as it were. Stick in our hands and see what we pull out. It's this.
That sounds like it's mail time. Here's the mail.
It never fails.
It makes me want to
Wag my tail.
when it comes.
I want to wail.
Yes, and it's the mail time, and a nice comment that has been made in the IRC channel. It's not swine flu, it's wine flu that I've contracted. Well, there has been a lot of whining, and I heard that it is contagious. It's entirely possible that I caught a little bit of wine flu. I think the best medicine is laughter and uncontrollable rage. Therefore, that is what is going to be happening. Right, in the mailbox this week, and a few interesting emails. Go on here that just came in from Urbu. Yes. And he says this. Why twinking now until 3.2 is the same as the emblem change? Ah, a proposition, you might say. Perhaps a hypothesis or theorem. We shall see. He says, hey TB, you have numerous times said that twinking is okay and compared it to the way the gear progression works at level 80. However, there is a major difference between the two. The way the game works at level 80 is that you can have a lot better gear than the next guy, but in the end, you are still able to make a difference in PvP if you are a skilled player that has just reached the level cap. You aren't able to beat the people with the bleeding edge PvP gear, but that's fine, that's how gear progression should work. After all, this is an MMO we're talking about. But as mentioned, there is a big difference between level 80 PvP and low PvP. Currently, even if you are a very low-skilled player with average gear, or indeed a very skilled low-level player with average gear, you often get killed by twinks before you even have the chance to react. One shot, that is. This is because the Twink's gear is so massively better than the average player that the level 80 equivalent doesn't even compare to it, not by a long shot. Essentially, having a gear gap of this magnitude decimates another very important aspect of MMOs and games in general called skill. Now, I've always supported bad players getting demolished by good players. That is fine. That is how it should be. However, how the low-level PvP presently works is that there isn't much difference between good and bad players with average gear when compared to twinks, because they will get killed during a global cooldown or two all the same. I have no problems with getting outplayed by someone that is better at the game than I am, but in fact, indeed, the fact that I am being more skilled doesn't make a large difference against certain players is a very frustrating one. I appreciate it... something, reply to this, whatever. Thanks for reading the email. Yeah. Well, I don't think that even remotely compares to the emblem change, let's be honest here. We're talking the emblem change and the problems that we have, the main problem with the emblem change. You know, I've got 15 separate problems, but a bit chain one hit me. Regarding the emblem change is the fact that you're rewarding bad players with good gear, yeah? In the case of low-level PvP, getting the gear you need to twink, you've got to work for it. And that gear isn't all that hard to acquire per se. It doesn't require skill to acquire, but it requires a lot of gold and a lot of running of dungeons and such. And that's fine, I'm okay with that. The thing is, you can't really balance PvP at low levels just because of the way that abilities scale. And that's just the way it is. Low-level PvP's never been balanced. It's not the first game where low-level PvP isn't balanced. I'll tell you another one that I played low-level PvP and that was Warhammer Online. Yep. Low-level PvP, bearing in mind it's a significantly more important part of the game, is really unbalanced. And that's just the way of it. You've just got to deal with it. Now, you might say that, hey, there's not a lot of skill involved, and I would agree, but to be honest, there isn't a lot of skill involved at that level anyway. You don't have enough variables for there to be a massive amount of skill involved. I mean, I don't really view PvP as a particularly skillful activity. Yeah, sure, there is some skill involved, like most things, but compared to other games, it's not really that tricky. At low level, where you've only got a couple of possible tactical options, really, how much skill is there involved in it? It doesn't matter if you've got the same gear as the other guy. There's just not an awful lot of skill involved. If as a rogue I have 5 skills, as opposed to level 80 where I have 30 or 40 or whatever, then I'm limited to what I can do. Yeah? It's like saying, well, okay, I can't aim in PvP, because that's just not in the game. So, say I'm playing an MMO version of Counter-Strike, and at low levels, I have 5 options, 4 of which involve shooting somebody. Yeah? And the 5th one involves missing somebody. So I get to choose between head, leg, arm, chest. To be honest, I'm still shooting the guy. it doesn't really matter what I use. I mean, I don't have a lot of tactical options available, you know? It's a bad analogy, I know, but it's just the point is, you just don't have enough tactical options for it to be skill-based. Hence, it is gear-based. That's just the way of it. I don't compare it. I mean, I can't see where the justification is to compare the two. There really isn't one, as far as I can tell. But anyway, thanks for sending the email in regardless. Now, I've got another email here from Joseph Mazur, and it's a response to last week's show, and he says, I had an idea that came to mind because of the discussion on the badge changes. He came back and said Blizzard wants to close the gear gap with basically a band-aid, and then you tied into how many guilds don't want to go back to Nax. I can relate. So my idea is, when they make new content, why doesn't Blizzard add extra bosses to raid instances to get players back in them? Example, Naxxramas. You have 4 wings and the last 2 bosses. Why not just add an extra area that has an extra boss after killing the bosses of the 4 wings, or the last 2 bosses, kind of like a heroic Gundrak? In normal mode, there is not a huge Oracle boss, but then in heroic mode, you get the option to kill an extra boss. It seems like a way to breathe life into an old raid while closing the gear gap. Lastly, no, I'm not saying stop developing new raid content, just that they should add bosses and wings to older raids in smaller patches. Sounds good on paper. Well, the problem with it sounding good on paper is quite simple. It's too much work. They won't do it as a direct result of that. What they like to do is show off new art assets and new stuff like that, because evidently they think that people seeing the inside of the instance and seeing the new art assets and stuff that it has to offer is vitally important. Yeah? Because they've already shown that they are willing to nerf and nerf and nerf again the content they have, just to get people inside the instance. So obviously they're not concerned about people having a challenge, they're more concerned about people seeing what pretties they have to offer. Going back in to see a new boss in Nax, well, yeah, I imagine it would get people back in there. The problem is you've then got to change the item level to get people interested in going back there. Yeah, a tier 8.5 raiding guild is not going to go back into Naxxramas to pick up gear that is item levels lower than what they're wearing, which means you have to have items levels higher, which then also means you have to proportionately increase the difficulty of the boss, which means that, as opposed to the system we proposed on last week's show, you get people saying, no, we're not taking the scrubs because we're trying new bosses that are harder and they're not geared for it. So it actually doesn't help close the gear gap at all. If anything, it promotes more segregation. Which again, segregation not necessarily a bad thing, but if you're going to repair it, you don't use something like that. Now, more emails. Yes, more emails coming in. I had an email here from Jordan Johnson, also known as Mr. NNJ, and he says this: Mr. Biscuit, as an avid role player in World of Warcraft. Ugh. Give it away. I talk to GMs regularly, mostly for reporting names, bots, arseholes, etc. One night recently I was chatting with a GM about my latest batch of reports. Wow, you have a batch? Do you have a filing cabinet full of these things? Yes. Go through the Dewey Decimal System that I have organised here. There's D7. Ah, yes. Mr. Schlobberknocker. Inappropriate name. Here's his file. Here's his rap sheet. I assume you'll do something about this, GMs, yes? You understand my meaning. You can pick up your payment tomorrow. Anyway, one night recently I was chatting with GM about my latest batch of reports when the following conversation took place. Details have been removed for GM's safety. I don't want them to lose their job. And he's got a transcription here, which I will attempt to enunciate in the most appropriate fashion imaginable. Well, he's an RPer, so let's make it a little bit appropriate. Forsooth! Well, that is all of thy names. Can I help you with anything? Well, over yonder, where can I find this creature of myth and legend, and I shall slay it for the glory of the townspeople? Sorry, but I'm not allowed to divulge that information. Ah! Verily, verily. Okay, I was just seeing if you knew where to find thy creature. Testing a GM, banned, lol. Besides, Total Biscuit says I shouldn't talk about stuff I don't know. And he says that just blew me away. Anyway, people always cry in QQ about how the GMs are inept or jerks, but I have had nothing but friendly encounters with GMs. I don't know if it's because I'm professional and friendly towards the GMs. Oh, blowing your own trumpet there, aren't we? Yes, verily. Instead of lol, Blaze, you sucks, why you make dis hang to game, this is stupid. As I'm sure most of the populace is somewhat prone to do. Now that I have finally caught up with the live shows in the archives and listened to Entirely Blue, please, I'll be writing them more often, yeah. Here's the thing, a lot of GMs are just normal players. Yeah, I'm not going to dispute that it's cool that GMs and CMs and the occasional dev listens to Blue Please. Indeed, I hope more devs start listening to this show and start taking some of the ideas on board. It is cool that GMs listen to it. I'm not going to dispute that. And to be honest, I've actually had positive experiences with GMs as well, most of the time. I don't recall all that many bad experiences with GMs, really. The only one that really stands out in my mind is when I reported myself for exploiting. And he's like, oh, what seems to be the problem? I appear to be making money via enchanting. Okay. Obviously, this is an exploit, since this is usually impossible. I would suggest you ban me for 72 hours and fix this bug immediately. I don't understand what you're saying. It's like, he never played along. I was very upset by the whole thing. Oh, well, never mind. Yeah, GMs are generally pleasant people. I don't have a problem with them. You've just got to bear in mind that they are customer service representatives. And a lot of the stuff that they've got to deal with is from a script. And they will have varying degrees of knowledge. And it is a vast game. I mean, good God. You know, it is a vast game with massive numbers of different variables, and often the people that actually contact them are not very helpful. They don't properly describe their problem. They're just like, oh god, lol, please fix. That doesn't help matters. As someone who has worked in customer service in the past, and it is a very sobering experience, I might add. Customers generally suck. WoW players, no exception. So, you know, the GMs actually have a reasonably hard job dealing with people like that. Hopefully the show helps them out with that, because don't worry, there are plenty of us players that hate the guys just as much, if not more so, than you do. Don't worry. We know exactly what you're going through. We have to go through it on a daily basis, and we don't even get paid to deal with these people. It's horrendous. My name is Total Biscuit, you're listening to Blue Please here on WoW Radio. I'm going to play a little bit of music, then we're going to get back with a description of the brand new Hollywood motion picture, Exodus and the Well of Tears. Oh yes. Drama, folks. In my element. Song coming up right now, it's Children of Bodom, Smile Pretty for the Devil. I'll be right back after this. Enjoy.